Okay, this definitely is not the worst or even the craziest show I've ever reviewed. Heck, it's not even by far the craziest Saturday morning cartoon show I've ever seen. But this is still a very tricky one to review. I mean, how do you review a show that by now is generally known for its nonsensical elements, questionable stories, and the reason those elements existed, and yet remains a beloved nostalgic piece? Based directly off of Gary Gygax's legendary, groundbreaking role-playing game, the Dungeons & Dragons animated series was co-produced by the game's manufacturer TSR and Marvel's animation studio, with the animation itself outsourced to Toei. It was definitely popular in its original run, given that it lasted on CBS for 3 seasons, even if there were fewer episodes produced with each passing year. And yet there are fewer series from its time that have received more criticism. Why? Let's find out as we dive into the Dungeons & Dragons animated series. Like the original He-Man, this was one cartoon where you didn't have to worry about a pilot episode because they just tell you the setup every single week in the intro. The deal here is these little rascals knockoffs are all at Six Flags when they all decide to get on the Dungeons & Dragons roller coaster, and apparently the ride is being run by Beetlejuice. Everything literally goes off the rails, and the next thing they know, they're being attacked by Gleeok. Man, I hope the designer of that ride was fired. And then this little hobbit thing gives them all magical items that they all automatically know how to use. Well, gee, if this guy had given Ralph Hinckley his suit, he'd have had no problems whatsoever. After that, the little creature who calls himself the Dungeon Master says that they are in simply what is known as the realm of Dungeons & Dragons. Is he the one who sent them here? You got it, not explained. And this is one time where that makes sense because not explaining is what this little dwarf is best at. So the series mostly focuses on the group constantly trying to find a way to get back to their home world, with Dungeon Master giving them very vague hints as to where they can find such means, which pretty much always involves some quest in some part of the realm.
I have found a possible way for you to get home, but it is very dangerous.
What isn't dangerous around here?
Far to the east, there is a sad and desolate land. It is known as the Valley of the Beholder.
Yuck! It looks horrible!
Their biggest threat in this world is the Force of Evil Venger, who is voiced by Optimus Prime and looks like the love child of Dracula and the Queen of Hearts. He's constantly after the magical items they possess because of their power. Yeah, he can just tap into their power, and it would supposedly make him strong enough to conquer the realm. This was back when all the cartoon villains were after nothing but power. It was kind of like a drug to them. By the 90s, a lot of them were checking into rehab over it. The other antagonist they must deal with, one that even Venger fears, is the multi-headed dragon Tiamat, who is basically the case of the show's creators deciding to take all of the dragons designed in the game and combining them to form one giant mega awesome super dragon! Really, this creature has the heads of just about every colored dragon in the game, and each head has the exact breath weapon from the game. The red shoots fire, the white ice, the black acid, the blue one lightning. What? I've got the entire D&D collection! At least the simplified version from 1992. that I kind of wasted my money on because I never had any people wanting to play the game with me. Stop hitting the like button for sympathy! As far as our band of kids goes, Eric is the ranger, and he's pretty much the one who always takes charge of the group. Diana is an acrobat who admittedly has the least personality, beyond maybe being the group's second in command. Presto is the magician, and you can probably tell by his appearance that his whole shtick is being a nerdy goof-up whose magic rarely goes right.
Abra, come here! Magic burgers up here!
Sheila is a thief whose cloak can make her invisible, and her primary trait seems to be being overprotective of her little brother Bobby, a barbarian who likes to hit things with his club and has taken in the baby unicorn Uni as his pet. Yeah, the unicorn is named Uni. The people who created these characters weren't exactly Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, were they? And then there's Eric the Cavalier, the spoiled rich kid who does nothing but be a whiny little pissant about being stuck in this world.
Listen, I've had it with your riddles. Now give us a straight answer for once. How do we get out of this world?
And yet, amazingly, this little whiner is the one that many viewers actually sympathized with because he was acting the most realistic. And here's where we get into the fun backstory on just what this show had to deal with behind the scenes. The show's head writer and developer was Mark Evanier, and in more recent years, he took to his blog to explain the issues he had to deal with, not just with this show, but with writing for cartoons and kids programming in general in the late 70s and early 80s. From what I gather, the show was basically planned to be a lot closer to the actions of the game itself, but they were struck down by the Moral Guardian's firm stance against violence, which is why no one carried bladed weapons, Hank's bow shot energy beams and not real arrows, Bobby used his club to just cause earthquakes instead of bash monsters' heads in, Diana could only use her staff to pole vault, Sheila rarely, if ever, used her invisibility powers to actually steal anything. And Presto's magic can only do things like...
Presto, that's the dumbest thing I ever...
How is this show not parodied by Mad TV again? But more than anything, the proposed scenario where the kids would actually be scared of the situations they were in and depressed that they were trapped in this unknown world, you know, how most kids would act in such a world that isn't just made up in their heads, was completely scrapped at the insistence of the parent groups. So instead, we got most of the kids usually agreeing to do anything the Dungeon Master suggested, and then we got Eric, always complaining about DM talking in riddles and not flat out showing them the way to get home. And of course, he was always made into the butt monkey for his attitude.
I don't ride with anyone else. I want a steed of my own.
Presto, would you produce something for Eric to ride on?
Sure.
According to Evanier, this was one of the most common tropes forced on cartoon writers in this time period. Basically, there was a mandate to teach the supposed rule that everyone is supposed to get along and be in total agreement with one another, and the one person who dares to have a different opinion is the bad one. And what those shows ultimately did was breed an entire generation of cynics who would use the internet to complain about almost everything going on in the world. Top-notch job! Ultimately, Evanier did get his revenge when he became head writer on Garfield and Friends and created his big take that to the trope in the form of...
Oh, we are the Body Bears, we never have a fight. Anyone who disagrees is never ever right. If you have a point of view, then keep it out of sight. Oh, we are the Body Bears, we never have a fight.
That alone can make me forgive the guy for creating Scrappy-Doo. What makes Eric even more sympathetic is that when you think about it, Dungeon Master is kind of a dick.
And remember, sometimes by looking back, you can see a clearer path through what lies ahead.
Oh, brother, here he goes again.
But beware, for only beauty can defeat the eye of the beholder.
Aw, give me a break.
He's always talking in riddles as to what the kids need to do to get home, and then just vanishes to leave them having to deal with the lizard man ogres and whatever else is out there trying to eat them.
Get ready, guys. We've got him now.
We've got them?
Really, the realm is worse than the Australian outback in that department. Dude, you could at least give them a map to show them the safest route or something. Then again, I guess it could be worse. If Jason Fox was their dungeon master, he'd send them all to the land of the giant weird beasts with raw meat strapped to their backs. And of course, whenever they find one of the multiple portals or gateways, something has to happen where they have to sacrifice their way home. So when you think about it, this show is actually teaching us that doing the right, unselfish thing will always get you screwed. So not only were these forced morals annoying to watch, they were completely ass backwards. Maybe the parent group should start being taught by the kids instead. And yet, the most insane thing has to be that whenever they find a way home, it always looks to send them back to that amusement park. How is that place still open even? I mean, they had a whole group of kids just disappear on one of their rides. Heck, the season 2 premiere revealed there was another kid that got sent here via the same coaster. The police should be swarming this place! There should be mass lawsuits from their parents! Did no one even care that their kids just vanished? Maybe they're all in the same therapy session with Captain N's parents. The writers did start getting some leniency in the later seasons. For example, there were more instances when Eric was actually proven to be right in his skepticism, and the frustration of constantly failing to get home began showing on all the kids.
That was a pretty tough decision you made with the mirror back there, Eric.
Yeah, I know.
But we lost another chance to go home.
There'll be other chances, Bobby.
It ultimately came to a head in the episode The Dragon's Graveyard, when all of the kids finally got fed up with Venger thwarting their attempts to return home and flat out decide that killing the bad guy will solve their problems. They even go so far as to seek help from Tiamat to do so.
Do not let your anger control you. The course you are taking can only lead to ruin. So then, it has come to this.
But yeah, they ultimately can't do the deed because of the whole we have to be better than the villain thing. And Dungeon Master hints that this is supposedly their next step in ultimately finding their way home. Yeah, that's the other thing about the later episodes. They start dropping very subtle hints as to the relationship between Dungeon Master and Venger and whether or not there actually was a reason for the kids being sent to the realm. Unfortunately, these questions had the chance to be answered, but never were. Michael Reeves, who was a regular writer on this show and others that we've covered in the past, was commissioned to write a final episode for the 3rd season that could have either provided a conclusion to the series or set the possibility for a 4th season. And the episode was never produced. Alf flashback, urge to kill rising. For those not aware, the episode was to reveal that Venger actually is the Dungeon Master's son, and the whole purpose of the kids being sent to the realm was to ultimately find the way to purge Venger of the evil he'd been possessed with. I might not have revealed that had the actual episode got made, but for what it's worth, the script of that unaired finale was found and made into an audio drama that was included in the first release of the show's DVD set. Naturally, I ended up with the second release that didn't include that, but you could probably guess it's been uploaded somewhere. Either way, the final episode getting the screw job like that is kind of a fitting end to the series, because Dungeons & Dragons is definitely a show that could have been more. It's not a bad show, and it's easy to see why it remains loved to this day. It has good dialogue, animation, and action, and did the best job possible with what the creators had to deal with. But especially after knowing all the meddling that was involved and how it could have been concluded, there can definitely be a feeling that the show could have been greater. This to me is among the shows that could definitely benefit from a reboot or relaunch with the right production team. Of course, given that those moral guardians have gotten their evil claws back into cartoons and are completely neutering them, we may already be too late for that. But hey, if they do remake the series, maybe they just might find a place within it for this guy.
This time, Damodar, don't fail me.
Come on, like you thought I was gonna forget about that? See you next time on TV Trash.